Well, I suppose we're back again with Layer 1
The return.
to continue our little saga. we have to keep going. We gotta complete the arc,
Complete the
which we have no idea how long will
prophecy.
actually be. but
I feel
it's
like we'll see.
4
We'll see.
maybe. We had other ideas too.
Yeah.
Now things are happening all of the time now. It's kind of strange. It's only proving our points more now in real time. Just you listen to this
Everything.
and you just look outside. Well, not outside because it's already a nightmare out there. But if you look online, you could see that everything is leading to something, certain event, certain happening, the happening of all happenings, perhaps.
The ultra happening.
The ultra
The happening.
happening, a
The
hyper
happening that end all
happening,
happening.
perhaps.
The hyper happening. So yeah, that gets into. I mean, it's gonna be on the fucking thumbnail. I don't know why we do this every time, but you know, we're those guys, you know. So today we're talking about, drum roll please. The Hypercrisis.
Yes.
Now, this all starts with DC, as in
Yes.
like the comics, right? Like DC Comics. Um, in particular, Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison's work. I guess. I mean, Grant Morrison is like a pretty famous but prolific comic writer.
Yes.
Um, you know, he did like Doom Patrol. He worked on Animal Man. He did some Green Lantern stuff, Wonder
Yeah.
Woman, Earth One.
All-Star Superman, like a little bit of everything for DC.
He's done some stuff. But so I think one of his like more cult classics is probably like The Invisibles. You know, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Well, the thing with Grant Morrison is that, I mean, he's a weird dude. He's like literally like considers himself like a magician, right? Like he's a practicing magician. Like magic is his actual deal, right? And so I believe we talked about this in, was it the last episode or the one before
Uh,
that? I forget.
yeah, no, I think we touched on it in the last one when we brought up his whole paper sigils thing.
Yeah. Yes, okay, we did.
Mhm.
So yeah, so he came up with the concept of the hypersigil, which is this kind of magical cybernetic phenomena in the sense of like it's a kind of feedback loop, right? It's like a fictional reality engine feedback loop type of concept. It's similar to the CCRU's concept of hyperstition, right? In some way, you're right. You know, the fiction that
Yes.
makes itself real, but in I feel like the hypersigil is more magical. It's less of it's, well, frankly, honestly, reading the CCRU,
Mm.
maybe you could argue hey,
So, yeah,
never mind. Well, that's a whole
those who
that's a
know.
that's a rabbit hole for another fucking time. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, so basically you have the hyper sigil and this idea of like narrative as kind of a spell so that the narrative can become reality, and he famously did this with the Invisibles, right? The Invisibles was supposed to be a hyper sigil. It is a hyper sigil, and so there was this DC like comic arc that he kind of wanted to do, wanted to be a and he wanted it to be kind of like a meta type of. I don't know if it was ever confirmed that he wanted it to if it was supposed to be a hyper sigil, but like it was this weird meta storyline, this big multiverse spanning arc. This is going to be called Hypercrisis, and so eventually you get to the to 4chan, to the co-thread, where I believe it was 2014. People, it's co, so they're talking about comic shit. What else we're talking about? DC eventually, Grant Morrison and the Hypercrisis arc, and then you get the thread, and you describe the thread, so it's not just me.
Oh, yeah, no, of course. No, it's this anon who has been looking at looking at all of DC, because of course it's comics. There's a lot of multiversal events and a lot of things caused by time travel and all these sorts of things, and he's piecing together how throughout all of these events the Flash is a key element. He's a key little point on all of them. It started with Flash of Two Worlds, like the earliest one, with it's just two Flashes, like two different worlds, that sort of thing. But then it goes on to like Crisis on Infinite Earths, Final Crisis, Flashpoint. There's all these events that things are happening on a multiversal scale where Flash is important to helping prevent it, and they kind of go through and piece together of how the multiverse within the DC universe works, because it's obviously different in different comic universes, and how the one in DC works is how outside, like, each universe is basically the comic itself somewhat, like the way it's structured physically shown in the books is like comic panels for each universe, and it's all kept together by like within the source wall, they're all separated by the source wall, this ethereal like outer universal null zone type of thing that try to focus on one here because there's so many of these like
there's
multiversal events.
There's a lot to this.
Yes.
Basically though, the idea, right, is it starts with the Flash. It starts with like the Speed Force, right?
Yes, and how like the guys in this thread, or well, the main guy, of course, he kind of
Cosmic Engine.
Yeah, Cosmic Engine, but he kind of makes the Speed Force an analogy out to be agency, basically, because they start to piece together this whole, looking at all the events, they start to see that like little things are relevant or have a way deeper meaning to them than one might think. Because if like when I was younger, I read a lot of these comics. I have a lot of comics and stuff, and I was big into the multiverse stuff. I never gave it that much depth. I was like, oh cool, all the characters from all universes are meeting up and teaming together. But like looking at these these threads and these things that people have kind of theorized on, and of course once you make the Grant Morrison connection, it starts to make a ton of sense with like his other works and his whole like, I don't say ideology, but his whole view
his
of
weirdness
and his weirdness, where they start to piece together all these different aspects of the DC universe as either they're like, yeah, the Speed Force being embodiment of agency in a person, basically, or a character in a story that they put together, that the source or the source wall itself is kind of like a collective, like, the whole concept of, we kind of touched on a little bit of like the collective belief, like making something real, but maybe not necessarily in the sense of reality, but
Well,
like this belief, this view that people have of this character and this world.
well, yeah, you get he brings into the anti-life
Yes,
equation,
yes, the
right?
anti-life equation.
And like as he gets into like it's funny because I didn't realize this until just now, honestly. But like the way he begins to describe the source wall, you realize um he's kind of talking about it in the same way as like the mob zone, the idea of the mob zone,
Yes, yes,
right?
exactly. Yes,
Um, in the sense that it's like the source wall, the bleed, they're literally the fourth wall,
yes,
basically.
yeah, exactly.
Like literal physical embodiment of the fourth wall, and that like all of these storylines where like basically this all started as a theory of what the Hypercrisis arc was gonna maybe be like,
Mhm.
because it was never made. It fell through with but like this add-on starts going on. He's like, well, I like because yeah, Grant Morrison in his weirdness and this he kind of had a lot of like meta ideas. So there's a lot of like kind of meta elements in some of his works, right? And all this he's piecing together all this stuff, and he's like, I think the idea is that all of these like multiversal like scale plot lines that have only been increasing, right? You get a bunch of like weird like meta shenanigans in DC increasingly over the decades, right? You get like retcons and crises across the multiverse, right? That threaten it all and all this stuff, and it's like this is happening with increasing frequency. You have these like new 52 style weirdness, and what the was basically saying was that like what the hypercrisis is like the barrier, the source wall, the bleed, right? The walls between worlds disintegrating and falling apart, basically.
Yeah.
And this makes sense with Grant Morrison's hyper sigil. This makes sense with the concept of hyperstation that's kind of tied to. Um, and so you get this idea, and especially since around this time, 2014, 2015, you start. I remember seeing talk of the hypercrisis. It was started as just like, oh, this was like a theory of like a potential weird little DC plotline that suddenly like it becomes more than that. It became like a board meme a little bit, and then
Mhm.
eventually almost like a site-wide meme, right? I remember seeing talk of the hypercrisis in a few places, right? Because 2014, 2015, 2016 is for everyone who was there and conscious, right? Like this is when shit started getting weird
Yes.
everywhere, right? I remember the threads be of like, holy shit, when the what was it? The eight goddesses, and it's like, oh, hey, when it came out that like fucking South Korea was being ran by a fucking cult, right? It's
Ah,
just like
yes, of
what,
course.
you get like oh hey, there's this like group in the Pentagon called the Seventh Floor Group, right? Where it's just like, oh hey, right, this is this like secret group that like everyone's kind of terrified of in the Pentagon. That's basically like a shadow cabal in the Pentagon. You start getting all these like weird stories. This is when Gamergate happens, and at first it's just this fucking honestly kind of dumb little shit show beef between gamers and games journalists. And yeah, like the games journalists were wrong to be dicks, but like it wasn't really that big of a deal in my opinion,
Hmm.
until it starts coming out that you have these like billionaire non-government organizations and like charities and foundations, and you have all these ties to like big money and international groups and billionaires, right? And it's suddenly like, wait, what the fuck? Like there's this quite literally big conspiracy to like fuck with fucking gamers for some reason online, like 4chan fucking V users for some fucking reason, like not literally targeting them, but like you have you know money going to these fucking games journalists going who these shitty games journalists who are colluding with each other, who are sucking each other off for favorable reviews.
Hmm.
um you have coordinated attacks between these news organizations. You have you know again billionaires funding basically pseudoscientific studies into like why gamers are bad and why gaming makes you like a misogynistic abuser or something,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
All this smear stuff. And so like you have all this weirdness, and I distinctly remember on like fucking 8 poll, right? Or I think it was 8 poll. It might have been somewhere else. It might have been fucking what, like slash 32 slash something like that, where it was like, oh hey, like it doesn't even feel like I'm in reality anymore, right? It feels like I'm in like fucking Deus Ex,
Yes.
or
Yeah, no, it's
some like some weird fucking conspiracy thriller like that. Like you're in a fucking science adventure visual novel, right? It's just like the
yeah.
Committee of 300 is fucking you know is going after fucking at channel users, and so,
Yeah,
something
you
like
see
that. Like
that, and it's just like, oh, that's, oh, what a funny visual novel. What did Chio mean by this? And then, you know, you get
and then suddenly
interested
it's
and
real.
think about it, and yeah, and then you look into it, then suddenly other people start, doing the same. They start looking into it and piecing things together, and they're just like, oh, this is just real. Like, this isn't even that exaggerated. Like, oh, you could say what you want about the actual, you know, nitty gritty of like, oh, time travel and
You
like all the, the tech stuff, the weird tech side of it. But the other side of it, like the shadow political,
Yeah,
influencing of online discourse
and
and events and, oh,
real
and real
world
world, of
shit too.
course. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Because
of
this was
course.
also when the fucking like the rioting really started in regards to like race stuff, right? You got like Ferguson
Mhm.
in 2014, and I remember back then, anons were finding, they were like, hey, look at this like video of like a U-Haul like bringing like rioters like weapons and shields and shit to find the police, and like, oh, here here's the person who drove it, oh, they're tied to some like anti-fascist group who has, and also have ties to like some like international charity that's like funded by a billionaire, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
There's
it's
all
just
these little
this,
links and little like shells and connections, and it all just
yeah,
starts to make this web of like an insane plot, basically, that is almost, it's almost endless. You can keep digging and find more and more connections and more
yeah,
events and things that were funded and shell corporations and charities and just it's just insane.
NGOs, all this shit, yeah.
It's and it's only gotten weirder like as time goes on, because obviously that started a while ago, and
It
it's
was a
it's still
decade ago
happening.
now.
Yeah, 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 exactly, a decade, and it's still each day. It's as almost bring out the mob zone accelerationism term again, because we use that in terms of like, you know cryptids and belief, but that could be almost a blanket term of just weirdness in general, of just, it's like, oh, it gets so mundane, like it's just so like, oh, it's like every second now something new happens, some crazy like thing is revealed, and it's just like, yeah, of course, yeah, right. And it's like, okay, what's the what else are you gonna tell me that's gonna, you know,
Yeah.
the bigger connection? It's like, oh, it's not enough already. It's not weird enough already for you. It's,
Oh yeah. It just kept. It's just things have gotten progressively weird, and that I remember that anon that comment of like it feels like I'm in Deus Ex or like Metal Gear was what they said, right?
yes,
Like that stuck with me because like yeah, it felt like that. It felt like suddenly I'm living in a Deus Ex or Metal Gear plot line, right? Or like we brought up science adventure because that's our thing, right? But
yes,
like this weird like conspiracy thriller, almost sci-fi type of fucking plot line. Suddenly, like it felt like reality and fiction were merging, right? And that's why when in response to that, Anon said, it just said the simple words "hypercrisis is real." I was like, "Oh shit!"
oh my gosh, yes, yeah, no, you really made that connection, and now it is definitely like it's even more real. It was so real for that, and shout out to that Anon because oh
Yeah,
my god,
he
how
was real for
naive we
that.
were 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, I remember, 10 years ago, I was there. I was a stupid little teenager, right? Barely just out of my preteen years, and I was just like, well, like, what the like, it's just yeah, just like what the fuck, like, what is this, right? Like, what's going on? Why is this happening? Why is this other cults and secret shadowy cabals and then eventually you got like the fucking like the UFO leaks, right? The
Oh
Navy
yeah,
UFO leak. Is the Navy going like, no, yeah, that's like legit. And you're like, well, what?
yeah,
That's just some straight up exile shit.
it really is, and that just keeps happening now. That's just a background event that just every couple weeks or months or whatever, there'll just be another UFO like disclosure, or it's like, oh yeah, that footage, yeah, real. We don't know what it is. On to the next thing, I guess. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
but that was to the point where it's like, like I don't even believe that stuff's like legit. I think it's like an op, which
yeah,
is even
it's
more
happening.
insane, right? Because
Yeah,
it's just like, why would you lie about that?
yeah. Now it's getting
Why do you
so
want people? What are you trying to hide that you want people to believe in like alien craft?
yes. It's such a strange like pivot. They spend decades on the other end of just completely like, nope, nothing to see here, don't worry about it. And now it's just like, all right, put out another story about the Alamaus out there, like, oh, spooky. Like, there was literally one today, one whatever of like,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
there was a large unidentified flying object over a nuclear facility, and it's just like, what? And it's
And
like,
then
yes,
I
there'll
don't know
be
if
another disclosure soon, another press hearing or whatever it was.
I don't know if the photo that we saw was like legitly
Yeah,
tied
no,
to that
it's
announcement.
no, of course. It was the photo that got attached with other people, and then everyone started spreading this one image of a big blue glowing light line in the
Which looked
sky,
like
and it's
just
like,
yeah, that
okay, that
looked
could be
like that
anything.
looks yeah.
But of course,
I don't imagine that's
the
what
people like latched onto it immediately and just like, yep, aliens are real, guys.
yeah, which is like kind of like really, dude,
The
like
ones
we're not
who
even sure that's the real image,
yeah,
but
the people who immediately fall for the op. Uh sure is so yeah, no, it's still happening. It's just getting more frequent now, and it's really strange as to why. And you know
yeah,
Project
it's
Bluebeam
really
is a whole other topic, but
yeah, that honestly should be an episode into
yes,
itself.
yes, yeah, no, then can definitely go into that in more depth, but still, just a proof of the eternal weirdness that just keeps accelerating as we go on.
Oh yeah, and it again, it got weirder, right? You get it, you got Epstein happened where it's like, oh hey, like the pedophile elite rings like are real,
Yes, yes,
they exist, and then they totally killed him, right? And they didn't even try to like make it subtle.
No,
Like
no. That one anon who posted whatever an hour before the story
oh,
leaked.
dude,
I
yeah,
I remember that one. I was there for
yep,
that one, and that was
yep,
something. I was just like, oh, who's this guy? I don't know. I obviously hear the rumors of those kinds of rings and stuff, but that's what like blew it wide
yeah.
open. Of just that happened, and then soon after the Black Book got leaked, again, whether it was real or not or whatever, but it was it was still very like you know it confirmed
Still
people's
very
suspicions too of just like, oh, who was involved. It's like, oh yeah, all these people,
like all the rich and powerful, basically,
yeah,
right? You have
everywhere. And it's and the weird thing too was everyone was like, oh, maybe it's fake or whatever. It's like it wasn't just a list of known celebrities and politicians and stuff. There was just a bunch of random, like, literally who's in there, and it's just like, okay, maybe there's more to that. And obviously with them nuking it in a lot of places, um also didn't help with fueling that little like, oh, was that real then, like?
yeah, yeah. You've had so much weird shit over the years, right? Like fuck the remember the spirit cooking stuff, right? Where it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, they just like actually do like weird occult, like satanic rituals. And I mean, you already done known if you
Yeah.
like remember the fucking when Alex Jones fucking snuck into Bohemian Grove, right? Like
Yes. Oh, and that happened
uh
again recently
happened
too.
again. Yep,
Yeah,
that
they
happened
got,
again
got a good.
recently.
Now we got high quality like footage of the event instead of the old or 15, 20-year-old footage we'd had before. Now it's just,
Honestly, I kind of like the like 20-year-old
oh yeah,
footage
no, it
better,
adds
just
the,
aesthetically.
oh
It's very
yes,
analog horror in a way, like,
yes, no, it
but just
definitely
real,
adds to the vibe. Now it's a little
which
less, it's like, oh
makes it
okay,
cool.
there's,
Um, you get fucking remember the tunnels
oh yes, the New
under New
York
York, right?
tunnels. Yeah,
The tunnels and the fucking
the New York tunnels, the Florida Mall entities, there's been so much this year,
what?
it's insane.
I don't know about the fucking mall
Okay,
entities.
again,
I think
another,
that's
but again, just
bullshit.
people throwing more crap under the fire of weirdness and just stuff that ignites and takes over the news
Yeah,
cycle. And
I guess, yeah, you're right, right.
like,
You had the like the Vegas remember the Vegas like alien
yes, the
like
backyard
encounter?
alien
Yeah.
event. Yeah, yeah, there's been,
I'm more so talking about like the verifiably real shit. That's
oh
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
if you had before 10 years ago, before even like 8 years ago, like the stuff that's just like if you told me that if you not only told me that, but you had like verifiable evidence, if you had like footage, documents, which we have for all the other stuff we've talked about
Yes.
so far, besides the Vegas and Florida thing,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed you, right? Like I would have been like, that's horseshit,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
That's
no,
like that's like fucking like some above top secret fucking I'm talking about the forum if anyone knows above top secret, the conspiracy paranormal forum, like that's like something that would go on there, right? That's like some Project Montauk schizo shit. um well, maybe not that, not Project Montauk schizo, but like like it's
adjacent.
I would have been like, yeah, I would have been like, you're a weirdo who wears a tinfoil hat so that the fucking government doesn't, fucking hijack your brainwaves or some shit, right?
Yeah.
And of course, now it's like, I'm not saying I believe that, but it's like you have stuff where it's just like, you look into things and you find like, oh, hey, did you know like the fucking like harp is actually capable of creating artificial aurora? If you had told me that, I would have. If you had told me that anytime before, we've like I was shown like actual like documentation that's like, yeah, like rigorous scientific documentation. It's like, yeah, like that HARP did. It's like, yeah, we can do that. I wouldn't believe you. I thought you were like a conspiracy theorist who thought like HARP can also like control the weather and shit. And now I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Maybe it can.
Yeah, yeah, no, because I was aside from the or adjacent to the harp thing, there was all the stuff I've been hearing for a while now about out in Dubai and out there that they've been messing with like cloud seeding and that sort of stuff too, and you know,
Yeah.
it kind of connects in a little like more webs, more things in the
Yeah,
the chain are being
you look
linked, and
you look into it and you realize there's a long standing history of this kind of shit.
yeah, yeah, it's and with that Dubai one, there was literally the floods this year that were just it's like yes, the desert desert metropolis got flooded suddenly, and it's just like curious. I wonder how.
Yeah.
wonder what was about, but of course it's gone now, buried in the cycle, and like
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is everything just gets buried, right? Like you don't have everything gets memory hold, right? Because it doesn't have you don't have time to stick with it, right? Everything there, it's funny, right? Like I remember, young when I was younger and like watching like older movies and stuff, like about like journalists and shit, like the journalist characters were always, they were after the big story, right? They have the big
yes,
scoop. But there's no big stories anymore. There's no scoops. Everything is just like a little, a one day thing, and then you move on to the next thing.
yeah,
So you don't have time to really process all of this insane shit that we've been talking about. So even though like almost everyone knows about them, like how many of you listening actually thought about have actually thought about, the spirit cooking, um, fucking, you know, the New York Semitic tunnels, any of this like more obscure weird stuff. The eight goddesses, right? The cult that was running South Korea, the seventh floor group. Like no one talks about this stuff anymore, except like just the conspiracy schizos.
yeah,
Because again, it's just next headline, next headline, next headline, next outrage, 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 outrage.
yeah. Bad. Eternal
Um,
sea of noise. The good old what was it? Brave New World, was that it? Huxley, his view of the dystopia, not the 1984 shut down. It's like, oh no, we'll just flood it, with everything you can think of, every bit of
well, yeah, it's fucking it's hyper normalization, right?
yes,
The old Soviet term. That's what they did too.
yeah,
It just it's fill the airwaves with so much bullshit that even if it's bullshit, there's so much bullshit all the time. You kind of just like can't you can't
yeah, yeah.
because
No, it's
you don't know it damages your ability to tell what's true anymore. You can tell what's bullshit, but you can't tell what's true.
yes,
That's the scary part. That's the dangerous stuff because no one's. I mean, it has this double effect where it's simultaneously the reason no one is living in reality anymore, and the reason no one can tell they're not living in reality anymore. Right? No one's realized that that the hypercrisis they're living through it. They can't see that this like weird. They're living in this weird, almost fictional, Deus Ex, Metal Gear science adventure plot line, this weird conspiracy esque world because they're just inundated with so much fucking bullshit
Mhm.
that they really can't realize how weird things have gotten.
yeah. No, again, the mob zone accelerationism ties in with hypernormalization and shit. It's just very intertwined because they flood everything with everything you could think of, and people are just everyone's attention spans, and again the news cycle and just what people talk about, just next thing. It's like, oh, okay, old news. It's a week, 2 weeks at most. We're not going to talk about that anymore, even though it was like one of the biggest, arguably a biggest historical event in decades. The thing, for example, just happened. All right, on to the next thing. You know, it's like, oh, that's just boring, whatever, who cares? It's like, oh, you'll cares about the answers or whatever. You'll have a couple of people whining about it online, but then it's the next weird thing. It's like, oh, okay. It's insane to watch. Just because, yeah, how
Yeah.
many people just accept it? They just keep going. They just keep like, not keep going, but like, you know what I mean? They
Oh,
keep
yeah, they just
just chugging along. Just don't think about it much, or they'll talk about it as it happens, and then again, yeah, they won't think about it again after a couple weeks or months, and because it's just been so much has happened between then, just more just keeps happening, and it just keeps accelerating, and what are you gonna do? It's like, oh well, I jump onto the next thing.
yeah. I mean, the kind of horrifying thing, right? Is I mean, this is part of why, like there was no successful rebellion or revolt in the Soviet Union, right? It just collapsed in on itself, right? You never had a real proper revolution that overthrew the caved in under its own absurdity.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of the feeling I get. I think that's the feeling a lot of people get in terms of the West today, right? Where it's just like it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's just collapsing in from the absurdity because you don't have any real rebellion, any real revolution because you can't properly organize if you can't properly come to any kind of consensus on what the truth is, right?
Yeah, the truth, and yeah, the just the factions too. Just if you think of that too, of like there's so much stuff that goes out there. There's people who will believe a couple things, people believe a couple
Yeah.
other things, even though technically they'd be aligned, but they're both like against each other because it's like, oh, we disagree on this weird, obscure, like insane thing. Yeah.
That's the thing I was going to say, right? Is it also creates it intrinsically creates the polarization, right? That's why like no one likes the current system, but most people are actually working to preserve it largely because like one side's like, well, I don't want the evil like fucking baby murdering, child mutilating communists to win.
Mhm.
And the other side's like, well, I don't want the evil, racist, sexist, fascist to win, right?
Yeah.
So there's as much as everyone hates the system, it creates this hyper polarization that means that both sides even though they hate the system, would prefer the system over their like direct enemies winning. So they both ultimately end up fighting to preserve the system because that's a preferable alternative
Hmm.
to the other side. And so that's how you get where we are today, really.
Yes.
Uh, And so, I mean, you kind of have this problem where it's like, I mean, it's probably going to keep accelerating, right? It's probably going to keep going.
Hmm.
Um,
It's gonna get weirder. It's gonna be happening even more frequently. It's gonna go away more frequently and more quickly, and you know, just gonna lose their minds or something.
well, yeah, that's the real question, right? Is what's like, does this have an endpoint? That's the question, right? Because we know we're in it, right? We're in the hypercrisis.
Mhm.
We're in the dimensional merge. Yes, sorry to say, Chris Chan was right.
Of all
Um,
things, even more proof that we are in the hypercrisis and slash dimensional merge is that right there. That Chen was actually right of all people.
he was right.
It's
He's the prophet of the modern age. I don't know what to tell you.
oh man. Oh yeah, if that doesn't tell you where we're at as a civilization, I don't know what will.
Well, I mean, the fact that like Christian isn't even like a secret anymore, really.
No, no.
The fact that like normies even know who Chris Chan is now, like that's insane, dude.
Seeing Uwe Boll post about wanting Chris Chan in the Postal 2 movie he's been trying to get made is just, that was mind-blowing. It's just like right after the Kino Corner video with him dropped, it's just sudden, just everything. It's like, ah, yes, I have to have this Chris Chan in my Postal 2 film. I'm like, what do you mean? Where did you hear that? Did Kino tell you this? He's like, hey, look at this, look what's going on the net. You need to make this
Genuine
real.
insanity.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my god.
Well, and then you bring up the net, right? And I feel like that's probably the biggest driver of this hypercrisis, right? Because in a way you could call a lot of what's going on a kind of digital dimensional merge, right? Because it's the Lane scenario, right? It's the wired and reality merging into one. There's that aspect to this too, where I mean, fuck, like hearing real life people use terms like based or looks maxing, right? Or like red pilled, black pilled, like
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah,
Why
it
do
really is.
why do you know this? Why are you saying this? Why is this so seemingly well known that like you're comfortable like uttering these words in real life amongst other real life people? Oh
This,
yeah.
oh man, the bleed is insane. This coalescence
Yeah.
of
The wired
everything.
and reality merging, fiction and reality merging, right?
Yeah.
You get it. It's the hypercrisis. That's what we're talking about. That's what this describes. Is Ko was, I think, in many ways more right than I could have imagined. Even if like, fictional characters aren't literally coming into the real
Oh
world.
yeah, yeah.
Like
It's but like still themes and just overall like the substance of these things are bleeding in. Yeah, there's no superheroes out there. There's no none of
no
that.
anime waifus,
No anime
unfortunately.
waifus, no science adventures happen.
Yeah, no,
It's
nothing cool. Just everything horrifying and
yes,
like
all the plot points and lore is happening, but none of the fun protagonist adventures.
I was about to say, not even like the fun or interesting plot points and lore. Like just like the mundanely dystopian.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, that's why that's why those guys on that thread were making like they're connecting colors and all these different sort of like symbolism themselves, like the Superman symbol for hope and blue lanterns and all the lantern
Yeah,
cores to like, oh yeah, there's some essence there that's kind of real. And then they made the connection between the anti-life equation and nihilism, and how the speed force is kind of the life equation, the opposite of that, the again, hope and agency, and you know at least
yeah.
gives a little bit of tries to give a little bit of weight pilling to the whole thing.
The whole idea, right, is that as much as I mean, especially increasingly so in this day and age, right? As it becomes clear that like Nietzsche was right, about what
Yes,
the death of God would do to people and society at large, right? Like like just look at all like just look around you, right? All the hopeless people, right? All the
yes,
people who
there's
feel not unjustly, you know, downtrodden, right?
yes,
Downtrodden people who, you know, have been abandoned by the system, right? By the institutions that were built to help and protect them, are now not only not doing that, in many ways they're actively attacking them.
yes.
Um, but so now, people don't have hope. People are nihilistic. They don't believe in.
Yes, and we see the different sides of the nihilism too, where there's the handful who, yes, their life's been completely crushed and, they're just having a bad time. but they still, I don't know. I'd use us as somewhat of an example of like things aren't the greatest, but we're still out here, talking about things and not just eternally rotting and doing nothing and just being like, it's actually over. I'm just gonna stop participating. That part, the part, the completely just loose from everything. Just hide away from the net, hide away from anything interesting, just consume, basically, that kind of thing. But then there's the other where it is a nihilism, but it's out of like a malice, out of like, oh, okay, like everything needs to be destroyed. These anti-life people, these to say it bluntly,
Yeah.
these people who just like they don't want they don't want kids, they don't want family, they just they don't have good connections to their family. This just no,
They don't want
no
agency.
hope. Yeah, no agency. This gets into a whole other thing.
They want they want daddy government to come in and take
Yes.
take care of everything for them.
Yes, and
Right, which not to say that the government shouldn't do things for the people, but like there's a point where you take it too far.
yeah, no, like there needs to still be freedom to be a human being and live your life instead of just give it all up to the powers.
There's a point where you get Brazil tier, if anyone's seen that movie, right? Where like just the insanity of that movie, but like you see that in real life where you have stuff like that guy, remember who I forget, was he arrested or he got into legal trouble because he was collecting rainwater off of his own roof.
Yes. That
Insanity.
whole thing. Yeah, no, it's insane. Just like it gets tough. It gets tough seeing how insane things are going, but
yeah. You get like Britain where it's like, oh, you posted a meme, yeah, you're going to jail. And in fact, we want you in jail so much that even though we don't have room, we're gonna release like a convicted like murder rapist just so that we could put you, the meme sharer, in jail.
Yeah. No, it's now it gets into a whole other topic that this war for the people who still enjoy being a human being and experiencing life versus these creatures, these Hylics, these entities who just don't want that or can't cope with that in any way, where they have to just pure escapism, pure nihilism, pure anti-human transhumanism, just want it all destroyed or want to just crawl away and give up their agency basically entirely. They can't cope with it. They can't cope with reality, and it's probably gonna get worse as things accelerate. There's probably gonna be more people who join the escapism side, obviously there's so many terms you could put on that of this. That's where they do. It's like, oh, we'll just back the government. We'll back whoever the powers, the authorities say, because whatever, they could take care of it. Like, I don't care. It's like, oh, surely the authorities get it, versus the other side that the authorities tell me to hate.
Yeah, they hand over their mental faculties to the expert class.
Yes.
Right, which in many ways is, I mean, it's almost kind of the lesson. It is the lesson Dune was trying to teach, right? Which is that the reason the Valerian Jihad happened, famously, right, is because men gave their mental faculties up to machines. They let machines tell them what to do, right? And in many ways, that's kind of, I mean, that's what we're doing now too. But we're also doing this this kind of, you know, giving up your own thoughts to the expert classes, right? To,
Yes.
what TV tells you, what social media tells you, what just anything but your own thoughts, right? And your own
Yes.
research, your own ideas. So, I mean, it's this conundrum we're in, right? We're knee deep in the hyper crisis right now, in the hyper normalization and the dimensional merge, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call this weird time we're living in. Where Yeah, we're knee deep, and it might, it probably is only going to get worse. We might end up neck deep in this shit, right? We're
Yeah.
just already seeing people literally go insane, but like
Yes.
even more so. And I think we don't even know right now just how bad things could possibly get, and we won't know until they do.
Yeah. Yeah. And this,
Um,
uh, call out to the nothing ever happens crowd. Yeah, no, you're you're amongst those people. You don't notice. You're inherently a Mauve Zone accelerationist without knowing it. You just
he doesn't know.
he doesn't know. He just it's like, oh, what would be a happening to these people then? Like, what would they consider? Like that meme of the one whatever
The
the fat Wojak with the nuclear fire out his window, and he just covers his face and closes the blinds. It's like nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens. Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's gonna be
I think honestly that is a symptom of this, right? Is
yes,
you
where
you kind of
the insane becomes mundane.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? That's the thing. I'm reminded of. Have you ever watched Durarara?
Oh yes, yes.
Right. Remember that's like that's one of the themes of that show, right? Where at the
Hmm.
end of the first season, like Izaya tells Ryugamine, like this is fun and interesting and weird and wacky, right?
Hmm.
Well, like lock the fuck in, kid, because like give it a couple months, give it a couple weeks, even. This is all gonna be normal. This is all gonna be normal. The gangs, the like pharmaceutical conspiracies, the weird fucking people, the fucking demon possessing swords, the fucking Duluhan,
Hmm.
the fucking abnormally strong like bartender guy, like this is all gonna be normal to you soon. And you're gonna want to keep your I already know you're gonna keep searching for that high. Right? And I think the issue, right, in reality is that like you like that itch can't be scratched, so it feels like nothing ever happens. In
Hmm.
large part because I mean, I think nothing ever happens posters, and I say this as an occasional nothing ever happens poster,
Yes,
right? Is it feels like nothing ever happens because nothing ever happens to you,
that's it. That's what it is. It's not
right? Like
we're an observer to the things.
very
You're not.
recently, it was a neat. I literally did nothing but watch anime, play video, read visual novels, watch YouTube, etc.
Mhm.
Um, I was just riding away. Nothing ever happened, right?
Mhm.
And I have a job now, and even still, like nothing ever
Yeah,
happens, right?
it's
Like
it's still,
now, I still just watch anime and YouTube, and occasionally like read a visual novel, play a bit of a game. Now I just also go to work for 8 hours a day,
yes.
and nothing really happens there, right? I just do my job, you know. Um, And in large part, again, I think you have this kind of, what would you call it? I guess kind of ennui, right? Because I mean, it's kind of sad to say, but like I don't really have IRL friends,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
I don't hang out with anyone. I don't. I'm one of the like 63% of young men who don't have a fucking girlfriend. I don't even fucking talk to any chicks. Right?
Yeah.
Where do you encounter chicks these days? Um, I don't fucking know. I genuinely don't know. Everywhere I go, it's just where there are people, it's a sausage fest. Um, and in the few places where there are people, and even then, in most places where there are people, there's like no one my age. Like at my work right now, I'm the only one there who's around my age. Everyone's
Right.
older. Everyone's like middle aged, or if not older. No shade on old people, but like I can't really relate to you. What do I talk about with old people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like you know, hoping to change that soon. Hoping to get another new job where there's more people around my age. But like I've had that problem pretty much my entire like working life. Right. Every
Yeah.
job I've had, like like everyone was older. I think I only had one job where I worked with someone my age. It was at a Taco Bell, and it was actually with two people with two people my age. One was one of my friends' girlfriends at the time. The other one was a girl who had a boyfriend, and like not like I was interested in them or anything, but like when my friend and this girl broke up, it was like really awkward because I'm like, oh
Of course.
yeah, yeah, like it's just weird,
Mhm.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And then the other chick was cool. I liked talking to her, but like that's really where I learned that like I'm really not a normie, and I don't know how to interact with them. Right. I
Yeah.
learned this at when I moved in with a friend of mine, right, and I was around a lot more people my age, but I was just like, man, it's not just that I like with old people, it's because it's obvious, right, that like don't have much in common with them because it's a whole different generation. They grew up differently. They like different things, have different experiences. But like realizing that's like, oh, even within my own generation, I have this problem because I'm just a weirdo. Um,
Right.
was very I don't know what to call it, but it yeah, I think it strongly affected me. And so now I kind of have, and I know this is a long tangent now, but it basically it kind of all goes back to I think a lot of people are like this a lot more than especially young men around our age are have this problem where it's like it's hard to connect to other people. It's hard to find other people our age who we could connect to, and even when we do, it's hard to connect to them.
Yeah.
It's hard to form any bond. Like the incel crisis, basically, where it's just like, oh yeah, like 60 something percent of young men are technically incels, right? And but it's like it goes beyond that to like plenty of dudes are friendless, right?
Yeah.
Or if they do have friends, it's like they're just online.
Yeah,
right? All
yeah,
my friends are
everyone's,
online.
spread across countries and continents and stuff, and it's
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Like you know, and I frankly I don't have many of y'all left.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right, I used to have plenty, but like as time goes on, like you drift apart, things happen, you become kind of different people. And then too, you have the problem right where I remember my younger years, I w- I would talk with my friends online. Even if I was a friendless loser when it came to like IRL, I was content with the fact that like at least I had a bunch of buds online,
Yeah.
and I was pretty much always talking with them, right? Always
Yeah.
talking about fun, interesting things, playing games, watching movies and shows together. And now I have like, nowhere near as many of those online friends, and I don't talk to them as much as I, would want to, right? I don't have it, the conversations, these long, interesting conversations as much anymore. And that's a large part, right? Obviously, because the older you get, the more people have their own lives,
Yes.
right? Everyone has their jobs now, and they have jobs or school, right? University, and they have things they're doing, right? They got bills to pay, rent. They don't have time to be dicking around on the internet all the time anymore.
Hmm. Yeah.
And, I kind of I mean, now I don't either, right? Now that I have my
Hmm.
job, I have, I don't have that luxury in myself anymore. Which wasn't even a luxury by that point because again, like who the fuck was I even talking to? No one,
Hmm. Right.
was hardly ever online. And so like I was saying, I think a lot of people have this problem, right? We're very lonely, atomized society now. Everyone knows this, right? There's this epidemic of people with no friends, let alone a significant other. It's just spending all day doing nothing really because you work all day and then you come home and you're too tired to do anything other than just I don't know, fucking doom scroll TikTok, YouTube, anime, games. People. So many people I know who like become addicted to fucking like VR chat or Final Fantasy 14. You know, um, and so I think this is what enables the destruction of reality
Yes. A
because
fuel for the hypercrisis, honestly.
yeah, because you don't have anyone to anchor you. You don't have a group of people to anchor you in reality anymore. So
Yeah.
you go insane
Yeah. Lose yourself
because
in the
because
Wired or in fiction or whatever other little thing you're into. If you even have hobbies at this point, or you're too depressed to have hobbies, or too broke to
exactly,
have
yeah.
hobbies, or
Too
you know,
broke, too depressed, too just out of it.
yeah, yeah, where it almost forces people into the you know giving up agency and just consuming, just let life happen around them and
Yeah.
not participate. You know, and
No, yeah.
it's why these. It was interesting seeing in those threads, kind of to loop it back to that, the where they did have the sprinkle of hope. Like, yeah, it's hard. It's super. It's getting way harder to have hope and not be horribly depressed, and because obviously we're saying those things. I've suffered similar things,
Mhm.
except I still can't find a job because I live in dystopia. Um,
Couldn't Canada stand, yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
Rest in peace. My
even
condolences.
yes, truly, I need to get out of here. But that's a whole other problem. Anyway, But yeah, no, the guys in those threads were talking about a little more hopeful aspects, that all those stories, they do have their Flash, their warrior against the crisis, the one that the multiverse, the source, calls upon when these crises occur. And of course, they brought up the whole Superman thing and his whole, he's the hopeful one. He's the real, like, the symbol literally stands for hope. He's got, the whole little connection with the color scheme, though that was a little more abstract of a concept that they talked about, like all the lantern colors and the blue and the red and the yellow and the
I think honestly that's a really important
oh yes,
part of the hypercrisis theory, extended hypercrisis theory, I guess we'll also call it,
yeah,
where they talk about that kind of stuff. And I think what makes that really important, right, is that it hits at something that I've been kind of passionate about, which is the point of stories,
yes,
right? People, like, it hints at the fact that, like, people, we need these stories, we need these heroes, right? As something to aspire to, right? As an ideal to point to. I believe, it's funny. I think this is something also Grant Morrison said, that's often that's attributed to what's his face, G.K. Chesterton. I don't think he ever actually said it, or maybe he did, but it was worded differently. But basically, the quote goes, fairy tales don't teach children that dragons are real. Dragons already know they're real. The children already know dragons are real, right? Like, they're born knowing dragons are real. The importance of fairy tales is that fairy tales teach children that dragons can be slayed, right? And
yes,
that's the important bit there. That's what stories are important. That we need characters like Flash. We need characters like, well, but all the DC
yeah,
heroes, all the heroes who fight for something good, for something meaningful, for something right and human. Like, that's important because, like I said, we need something to aspire to. And I think that's why you have this attitude of, like, subverting these stories of,
oh yeah,
you making everything about being, like, morally gray to the extent of, like, absurdity, right?
yeah,
Where, yeah, just the way you see all kinds of beloved stories just fucking violated, right, by these corporations and these, like, dog shit writers who, like you said, they're anti-life.
yeah,
um they hate everything human, so they make these inhuman stories. you know Everything we've talked about is, I think that's why they do it, right?
yes,
They are on the side of anti-life. They are on the side of the hypercrisis,
yes. A war on
on reality.
soul, on reality. Yeah, it's a lot of things really, but the soul of creativity itself,
The war on humanity itself.
the humanity, of course. Yes, everything that falls under that category.
Yeah. So I think that's why I think that's why those good pro-human stories, are so cherished. There's something we should cherish. There's
Mm.
something we should strive to protect, right?
Yes.
As these forces try to fucking mutilate them, right?
Mhm.
And censor and alter them and just make them disgusting, really.
Yeah.
Um,
For modern audiences, and
yeah, oh god.
it's got to relate to reality, guys. You have to shove reality into everything, their reality, not
I was about to
the
say, it's not
reality.
even reality,
No,
right?
you know
It's
what I
just
mean.
like,
Their reality,
yeah.
their ideals, or The rot.
Yeah, the rot. That's it. The rot.
Mhm. And honestly, that's why these guys were kind of, it leans into the one of the most powerful things it is imagination and creation with passion for
Yes.
and respecting you know the human aspect of everything, the pro hope in its like base form of just there's more to strive for, there's more to like to make everything good and better, and like doesn't have to be nightmare hell world slop.
Yeah, there's more out there than just being a hyper individualistic, boss, right?
Yes.
Who gets all the material things you want. I feel like that's what a lot of media teaches these days is, yeah, fuck everyone else. Do everything you can to get ahead, right? Fuck everyone around you over. It's all about, getting, the fucking car, the nice car and the mansion and all you materially want. But and that it's really to enforce things that have already been kind of legislated, right? Like
Mhm.
that's already how the world largely works. That's how the systems in place in the
Yes,
West,
the
that's what they encourage. Y-
infinite push for capital, to quote a certain certain schizo.
Yeah,
Yeah, this that
everything is
go back to Nick Land, but it's all
productivity.
productivity above relationships, above family, above everything. Everything's about bringing
Yeah,
in money, but obviously that's starting to deteriorate, of course, because no one can even do that. They can't even do that. They were told that's how it works, and you know how the system's kind of in place, but they can't even do that. They can't even make enough to survive, let alone live for materialistic short-term pleasure. Don't think about the future, don't worry about it. It's and that and erasing or degrading history or stories and creativity and all this stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's tragic because all of this leads to this problem where so many people are so lonely and isolated, right? Even as we have the internet, this system that should allow us to be more connected than ever before. We're
Mhm.
more, atomized, isolated, alone than ever before. Communities have been completely uprooted and destroyed. No one really has communities anymore. No one really has close friend groups, right? That are ride or die, right?
Mhm.
You don't no one's forming families. Obviously, that's a big one. No one's getting together, right? We're the most single generation ever. Um, and so you got a bunch of people who are obviously mentally ill because of that, because the human organism was not designed to live alone, to be alone, to be
Yes.
completely atomized and isolated. We are communal social creatures, and we're killing ourselves, right? Like
Mhm. Yes.
being loneliness, like like terminal loneliness has the same like lifespan as like a fucking chain smoker. Like it loneliness kills. It literally kills you,
Mhm.
right? It literally destroys your immune system and makes it so you're more susceptible to disease and illness. Right. So it's like it's literally having a physiological effect because that's how not built for this we are.
Yeah.
But we're doing this. We're having this done to us, anyways. And so, like, this is why I think stories. I think particularly to go a bit weeb mode from like Japan, right, are where the Eye of Sauron is kind of turning to,
Yes.
right? Because you have stories that are very, I mean, one, they're just antithetical to a lot of this stuff, right?
Yes.
They're true, genuine, heartfelt storytelling. But you have a lot of stories, right? Like Steins Gate, Little Busters, which are very much about like the connections people form between each other, romantically or otherwise, right? The bonds people forge, these
Yeah.
really strong and close friend groups, that are really life affirming to all of the characters involved, right? They help
Yes.
each other out. They help get each other, over their past traumas and hang-ups and insecurities. And, is it any wonder people, are so these days are so again, mentally ill, right? Just
Hmm.
mentally unhealthy because you don't have these kinds of things anymore. You don't have people helping each other out, helping each other overcome, their insecurities or other such baggage, right? Because we have this attitude of like, oh, that's like your problem, right? That's like,
Oh,
don't
yes.
what's it called?
Oh,
Emotional labor, that kind of fucking
yes.
vile
This.
shit.
Yeah. Oh, I hear that a lot. it- it- you see it with these other people too, where it's like they feel like they have to ask permission to even vent to their supposed friends and things like these
It's
people
just like,
that it's like
dude,
this
that's
whole
so
because
sad.
there's these people who just they shut that off. They don't want to hear anything about any sort of hardship or trauma or mood, and they don't
Mm.
understand. It's like, oh, just get over it. Just like, oh, just get over it, or I don't want to hear about that. Oh, I can't handle that right now. I can't. It's like so that pushes people into themselves a lot more because there's just less people less people to go to. It's like, oh, this person's going through all this shit, but my shit is more important, and I don't want to hear them talk about it. So, you know, I don't know. That applies to a ton of things, but of course, yeah, that really is a number when people start doing that to each other, and oh, it's awful.
Yeah. Yep. This is why, though, I think, again, these stories are important.
Mhm.
It's important to try to, um, as much as things suck, to, try to find that in reality, not escape into these stories, right? Not escape, not to use them for escapism, but to try to use them to motivate you to be like these heroic protagonists, to find, your people, to find, as hard as it
Yes.
may be, where something real and genuine in real life with real people,
Yes.
not the shallow husks, the NPCs that seem to be everywhere all around us.
Mhm.
I think also going back to we're talking about when it comes to like the white pill that is storytelling, right? I think, and kind of where I want to end this off really is, I think an important part of the hypercrisis theory, or at least important part of what I think is kind of an underlying aspect of it. When it comes to like this white pill, this, stories are here to motivate us to act as a kind of beacon, right? As a kind
Mhm.
of something aspirational. I think another aspect of this too is, as the rot consumes, beloved classic tales like Star Wars, or whatever. I think it's important too. This is to, if you have if you have a story you want to tell, right? Tell it.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
even if you don't necessarily have the skills for it, you know, like go out and tell it. Go
Yeah.
out and make a website, make an account, start writing. If you're dog shit at drawing, well, practice. And frankly, like you don't even need to be that good. Look at guys like One, right? The creator of Mob Psycho and One Punch Man,
Yeah.
right? Like his art's not exactly great, but his storytelling is.
Yeah.
And so it got his stories got popular anyways, and now he has light novel, manga, fucking anime adaptations, right?
Yes.
Are you
Exactly.
gonna get that lucky? Probably not, right? But I think at the very least, like it's worth a shot. It's worth a try.
Yeah. Exactly. And in any way, like
But,
people do, there's so many ways to do
yeah,
that. There's people who go to their music or art and writing and doodling or whatever, or physical stuff. There's people who are into whatever sorts of stuff with your hands and woodwork and all these little things. And
yeah, whatever it may be, may be, we need more anti-rot.
yes, just
So yeah, I think
it's
I think that's where we'll leave it off. Is become the anti-rot.
yes, correct. That yeah, exactly.
As yes, as the world crumbles, as reality crumbles, build it up again. And with that, this has been Layer One.
Yes.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.
Deuces.